Time now for Voices of the Future, the show that amplifies the perspectives of the next generation of Republican leaders, young professionals, students, and policymakers who champion the values of limited government, free enterprise, and individual liberty. From grassroots activism to tech-driven policy debates, this program is your front row seat to the ideas shaping a freer, stronger America. Now, your host for Voices of the Future, Ardis Jackson.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another podcast here of Voices of the Future. My name's Ardis, and today I want to talk to you guys about redistricting, and I want to talk about why it's important here in California and why we Republicans are urging voters to vote no against this measure. And we also want to talk about how this can actually impact us everyday citizens and everyday voters. So I'm just going to go through some reasons of why everyone should vote no on this, and what is Republicans' view on this, and why not just Republicans, but everyone should be voting no against this measure. So we argue, first of all, that Prop 50 weakens the authority of the California Citizen Redistricting Commission. This has been drawing maps in the public sphere for California since about 2008 to 2010. This measure would seek to shift the redistricting process and authority back to the legislature. This would be harmful because it takes it out of the hands of an independent panel and gives basically an unfair advantage to basically a further entrenchment of a one-party state here in California. And as I was told through a state rep that I spoke with yesterday, it will also have a ripple effect throughout the rest of the state of California, from state reps, state senators, mayors, council people, and throughout the rest of the state. So this will not only add a few seats for California in Congress, but it will also add a ripple effect where the political officials in Washington and in Sacramento will be seizing power even more on a local scale as well. One critique we would say is that it divides communities of interest, it splits cities, counties, it dilute minority representation. So as Republicans in areas where the areas tend to vote heavily Democrat, this would be even further erosion of any type of Republican support or have a Republican voice at all in the state of California. This will just make things even worse. So we're against that for that reason as well. It's been highlighted that putting this measure on the ballot, holding a special election, and implementing new maps will cost significant taxpayer money at a time when the state budget already has pressures on it. We're already in a deficit. So, adding this measure just further makes a financial harm for California taxpayers. So that's another reason we're against it. The other reason we're against it is that it sets a precedent, risk of erosion of democratic norms. From what I've heard that the governor, Gavin Newsom, implemented this measure because he wanted to basically check Texas on what they were doing, because he felt like what they were doing was unfair. There's just a major difference between what Texas is doing and what California is doing. One, California is governed, their redistricting process is governed by an independent panel that was put in place by the voters themselves. And in Texas, they never had such a system in place. So it's not eroding the voters there because they have never voiced the will to put that as a measure for voters to actually have a say so in that. So they're not eroding voter voices. They're not eroding Democrats in that way because it was never an independent body set up to facilitate this process. But in California, we had a independent board. This independent board was equally made up, from what I've heard, of 4 Republicans, 4 Democrats, and 4 independents. And it made it very more lenient towards what the people desires were. It was more nonpartisan, and in a state where like California, where politics is way more aggressive here, having some form of nonpartisan body in this process was beneficial not only for voters, but also for Republicans as well, being a minority power in the state of California through Sacramento and through its representation in Congress. Some legal observers argue that Prop 50 is constitutionally vulnerable because it potentially conflicts with provisions that guarantee free and fair elections, limit politically drawn districts, or protect minority rights. So these are some of the constitutional questions that's arising from this. And we as Republicans see this as a clear power grab. It is also what we see as Gavin Newsom trying to secure his presidential ambitions in 2028. I think everyone and their mother know now that Gavin Newsom is thinking about 2028. In my opinion, he doesn't seem to be thinking very much of the residents of California. It also will dilute rural representation. It will further erode rural representation. Some rural areas and agricultural-based groups like the California Farm Bureau argued the proposed maps changes will concentrate political power further in urban areas because already, as you can see, if you look at the map, a voting map of California, you will see that all of the blue is concentrated in the biggest cities in California, being that LA and San Francisco. And I believe there's some blue pockets in Sacramento as well, but the common trait that you'll see is that the big cities is where all of the Democrat affiliate voters are registered at. And so this is where most of the Democratic Party in California get their authority from those voters already in urban areas. So this would further dilute, rural areas having a voice, and this will give even more authority and influence in urban cities. There also is the claim that communities of color may lose representation if new lines are drawn with less public input and more political motivations. So we think this is a bad thing because it basically takes the authority from a democratic process that was already put in place, and it just puts it in the hands of people who already hold sway in California and representation in Congress. And so we feel, and during the Electoral College as well. And so we feel like this is just an obvious power grab, and voters from all sides should be concerned about this. I understand that some, or maybe a lot of Democratic voters may not be concerned by this because they see it as, well, hey, it's a check to Trump. It doesn't really affect Trump, though. That's the problem. It doesn't really affect Trump as much, being that he's in the executive branch, but it does hurt voices, and this will obviously be a potential, a reflection of how this could harm even the Democratic Party in the future if, let's say Republicans do gain some influence in California. Let's say California starts going red or go purple. In the future, this could be a problem because Now they would be in a situation where Republicans would be calling all the shots, basically. When it comes to representation in California, Democrats will scream how that's, election interference. They will say that it's rigging. They'll say the same thing they basically said in 2016 when Trump first got elected as president. And so we're urging that all voters will vote this down. I understand for Democrats that this might be tempting to want to pass this measure, but at the end of the day, they have to realize too that this could be a double-edged sword. It could come back to harm them in the future. And we understand there's going to be Democrats who vote blue no matter who. They're going to support this measure because they feel it's a benefit for them. But for any of the moderate Democrats out there and all Republicans, needs to unite for this and come together to vote this measure no on Prop 50. And we need to get people out to vote as early as possible. I will admit that I was not aware of just how serious this issue was. And then I went to a Spark event yesterday and I was basically shown how this measure is very impactful to not only voters, but business interests, the agricultural industry. There's a lot more people that will be at risk if this measure passes. And the earlier we get the votes in, the better. So I will urge all people who are watching this podcast or listening to this podcast that please get out and vote. Vote as soon as possible. And also make sure you sign the voter ID measure as well. We obviously need more voter ID. We need election integrity here in the Silicon Valley, but also throughout the rest of the state of California. In a era when we have Democrats in the state of California that wants to keep power as much as possible, we need to make sure that the voters keep say and how that the government is held accountable to the people. This is a measure that was put in place by the people, and it should stay under the influence of the people. The people should have a say-so in this, and representation in California should not be partisan. This was already a measure that was put in place. It was very nonpartisan, and to take a nonpartisan issue or a process and make it into a partisan, process just erodes further the democratic process that our Democrat friends voice so much and scream so much about, that they're protecting, that they're all about democracy. And this is just another situation where we see the hypocrisy of California Democrats who are eroding the voices of the people and a process that represents the people and seizing power into their own hands again. So again, we want to make sure that people understand that this is a measure that needs to be voted no against. As many people as we can get to vote no against this. We need to keep this voting redistricting process in California. We need to keep this redistricting process nonpartisan, and we need to have it where there can be some Republican input in as well, because let's face it, California is in a mess right now. And a large part of that is because it's a already supermajority ran state, and Republicans barely have any voice in this process. So I think that I'm making my point very clear that this is a very serious issue, and, get as many people as you can. I was told you can deliver your ballot straight to the voter or registrar, I believe it is. You can also send it in by mail. Me personally, I like delivering it in person because it's already been, we've already had situations where voting by mail isn't always the best secure way to do it. So just if you can, go to your local registrar office, turn your ballot in, make sure that you have everything on there correct, and let's make sure we get behind this measure and that we make sure we tell the California officials in Sacramento that we want to keep our redistricting process nonpartisan, and we don't need them taking more power from the voters and keeping it for themselves. So get behind this measure. The last date will be November 4th. So try to have your ballot in before then. They already allowing people to fill out these ballots. So, and if you're registered to vote, you should get the ballot in the mail. I believe it should come to everyone's address that they have on file. So make sure you check and make sure you have that ballot, and let's get out and support democracy. Let's show California Democrats what real democracy works like. I'm Ardis Jackson. I am honored to be speaking about this matter. This is very important to me. This affects all of us as a whole, and we need to make sure that we don't allow our voices to be completely diluted. And I will also caution for all of my Republican friends that, don't think that this is something that can affect you, because it can. This is something, that's what they would like us to do. Just keep our head buried in the sand, continue to act like, oh, this will never affect me. This is a politician issue. These issues do directly affect us as voters, and it affects our industries that thrive in California. And we need as much California of our industries in California as possible. So we want to make sure that we support them. We want to support our farmers. We want to support our agricultural industries. We want to support business interests overall. And we don't need Sacramento further eroding voices that they don't agree with. We need more compromise in today's politics, and having a one-sided political representation is not achieving that. And in California, we need as much building and bipartisan support as possible, and Republican voices are important in the well-being of this state as well. So I thank you all for listening to my message. I hope that, again, we understand the seriousness of this situation, and that we will show Gavin Newsom, who's focused on 2028, that California and its residents matter now. We don't want to wait and sit around and wait for him to, jumpstart and further push his political career in 2028, when we have serious issues in this state right now. And just the money aspect, the taxpayer money alone is another reason why this is just completely, important, because the money that they're going into to have this Prop 50 put on the ballot is already very expensive. And we need to make sure there's some accountability here in California, and try to make sure that they use our taxpayer money for the residents and for the voters here, and not for themselves, and not to just enrich themselves. My name's Ardis Jackson. I'm with the Voices of the Future podcast. I'm your humble host here. And thank you so much for listening to this podcast. We'll be back next week for our next episode. I can't wait to get back to you guys. I have an exciting topic that I want to talk about next week, so stay tuned for that. And on a bright note, I will say that, the No Kings protest has been very funny to see and witness, just to see how people don't seem to even know what they're protesting now. They seem to just be protesting the protest now. And the meme of Donald Trump, in his plane, dropping, poop on these who we don't even believe are actual voters. We believe these are paid demonstrators. And so it's a funny thing to see. And it just shows, again, how the left is just completely losing their minds, in my opinion. Just all reason and sanity seems to be out the window. But anyway, this is Ardis Jackson with Voices of the Future podcast. Listen to me on the radio on Saturday, and we'll also be uploading to the YouTube channel, Young Republicans of Silicon Valley. Please search us up. Please give us a like. Please give us a subscription or subscribe, and we will further seek to expand the podcast. We want to have more engagement from the listeners and from viewers. So we have some exciting plans, and I'm looking very forward to what we have in the future here. But again, please go out and vote. November 4th is the last date, and make sure we vote no on Prop 50. This is Ardis Jackson with Voices of the Future. Have a blessed day.
You've been listening to Voices of the Future with Ardis Jackson, a presentation of the Silicon Valley Young Republicans. For comments and suggestions or to get involved, email SVYR.GOP@gmail.com. That's SVYR.GOP@gmail.com.